Good morning, and we are live at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's annual legislative conference, the 54th, here in the Convention Center. I am joined on the Impact Podcast studio series with Dr. Alaysia Black Hackett. Pleasure to meet you. Not
Yes,
really.
no,
We've met each other a number of times and had the pleasure to work with you. So, Alaysia, tell me a little bit about yourself for the audience at home.
absolutely. It's so good to be here with you today. So, again, I'm Dr. Black Hackett, and so I have had the experience of doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility for several years, starting out in higher education, where I worked at several colleges and universities, really advocating for students of color to ensure that they were seen, visible, and that just led into more advocacy work. I can't unplug from being a black woman.
You can't.
I can't unplug from raising a black son.
Indeed.
And so it's just part of my life. And so in doing this work, I obtained a law doctorate, a Juris Doctorate, and then I went into government. And so that led me into a appointed position from the former governor of Virginia, Governor Northam,
Yes.
as the inaugural Deputy Chief Diversity Officer.
Nice.
And there we did some monumental work for all of the 120 plus state agencies. And then that led me to being appointed with the Biden-Harris administration as the inaugural Chief Diversity Officer for the Department of Labor. And I was able to really work on workforce across the board, across the country, and do things with workforce development. So it's just been an opportunity, a learning opportunity, and just the impact that this work has had. Now seeing what's happening with it, I want to make sure that the messaging is correct, and to keep this conversation going.
And I've been following your work for some time, and I want to say, one, congratulations for the appointment. Two, also want to just kind of highlight, like, there's something to be said to talk about how do you, lift up diversity when it comes to federal agencies, right? We know that, the quotas that are in place don't always reflect what is actually being done, right? There's still work to go. But I also want to just honor you and to acknowledge the foresight that you had to really understand that the diversity, equity, inclusion, and access component was going to be important. And now here we are at this moment, right? Because the theme of the conference is made for this moment. And we really need to pay attention to how diversity, equity, inclusion, even though people are trying to silence the voices of us, that it really is relevant. So speak to me, tell us a little bit about your book. I mean, you are author, we're featuring, author showcase. But tell me a little bit about your book, The Diversity Illusion.
Yes.
Not inclusion, but The Diversity Illusion.
Illusion.
Yes.
With an I. So the Diversity Illusion, I wrote that book out of necessity. I didn't plan to write the book at all.
Okay.
After the current administration, the inauguration day, things just started rolling.
Right.
My inbox was inundated, right? Inundated with requests for speaking engagements, for press interviews, exploratorial interviews from press.
Right.
And so I was like, I need to scale this. I'm only one person as I'm writing these talking points. I wanted to scale it because it was clear to me that the narrative that's out there is completely wrong. And so the people who are talking the loudest are the ones often heard, and the narrative about what diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is and isn't is wrong. And so I felt like it's important to get this narrative out. I know folks are asking, why is DEIA across my news all the time? What is this? Why does it matter? And so the book is written simple enough for the everyday person to understand it, right? But it's also built in research and case management from my years of experience.
Right.
And so one of the biggest misconceptions is that DEIA equals Black communities or Black people.
And
that is incorrect.
Right. It's everybody. I mean, even when you think about just the aspect of disability, like those who are disabled are constantly not part of the conversation of what DEI looks like, DIA, what DEI looks like. And, even when you think about just what that looks like for their community, we think about those who are hearing impaired. We think about those who have mobility challenges. When we talk about accessibility, even into a public building, when you're not considering that, you're leaving a whole scope or a whole group of people out.
Yes.
And so how do you like how do you incorporate that into the book or into the conversations that you're having with people without them feeling, I guess, threatened in a way that everybody else is included but us.
Right. So I make it very plain that and clear that DEIA is not taken from one group and give it to another. DEIA is equity work, is balancing the playing field. You can't necessarily make it fair because the systems were created
Right.
exclusively anyway, and we can talk
Correct.
about that later. But it's balancing this playing field so that everyone has a chance for success.
Right.
And so I also make it clear that it's not just racial ethnic groups, it's gender, sexual orientation, veterans, youth programs, youth
Right.
events. It also includes rural America. During the Biden-Harris administration, there was the bipartisan infrastructure law. One of the DEIA, the equity initiatives, was ensuring, because we learned during COVID-19 that when students had to do their schoolwork at
Right.
home, there are a lot of communities that didn't have internet
Correct.
access.
Right.
And so rural communities are marginalized communities.
Indeed.
That is a demographic in DEIA.
Correct.
And so I want to make it very clear that most people, most residents in the United States of America fall in one of the categories of DEIA. And that's like when I start the conversation.
Correct.
Because you have to have that fundamental truth to know that this is not about race or Black communities or Hispanic, Latino only. It's about all communities that are marginalized.
And I remember during the administration, I mean, there was a big push towards having the investing in America, right?
Yes.
But then there became a whole nother program or project that we had that was investing in rural America.
Yes.
I mean, with the acting secretary, I believe she's a secretary, but acting secretary
she's doing the work.
too, where we were intentional about going into areas that did not necessarily have an acting secretary or a secretary come out to the area. I mean, I remember that being a surprising thing. I do remember conversations that we had, you and I, at the time about just how do we really uplift the voices of people who do not feel heard. So I want you to talk a little bit about the segment that you were on earlier this week. You were on the main stage with a couple of powerhouses as well, including yourself, about just AI and diversity. So what does that look like for you, and how do you bridge that conversation for people?
So AI and diversity, technology and diversity, everything. One of the things that I really want to stress is equity is the connective tissue. A lot of times people think equity is just an add-on for later, or this is out of your lane.
Right.
But the understanding is equity is the connective tissue. It's just like when you do macaroni and cheese.
Right.
Right. It is the egg.
Right. Or the flour. Some people don't like egg.
Right.
But some people
the
don't like
flour or egg.
Yes.
whatever the binding agent that you
indeed.
use,
Yes.
right? That is the connective tissue. So equity has to be at the center of the conversation.
Right.
It should be led with an equity lens. And so when we talked about the AI, a lot of times people will not think equity should be discussed.
Correct.
But you're going to leave behind so many groups of people, whether it's senior citizens, that's a diverse group.
That is a diverse group. And they are one of the largest voting groups, which people forget. So it's like you're leaving out the people who are the ones who are voting the most, which is weird. But go ahead, sorry.
But you have to have these conversations where you're uplifting these demographic groups.
Right.
And so with the AI, one of the things that I brought out is just this idea and understanding that you need diversity in not just the operation of it, but writing the software.
Indeed.
Because the algorithms can exclude,
yes.
right? So we are basing our systems in the United States of America based on the Constitution of the United States of America.
Right.
Right. That's the biggest system that was created at first.
Correct.
And when you look in the demographic group that was in the room signing that document, it was one demographic group. White, male, cisgender Christian men.
Indeed.
So anyone else, we don't know if there was someone who was a disabled, if there was a Black or a tribal American indigenous person there, they were probably slaves. There were no women in the room. And so the viewpoint from that system that's created in the United States is from one vantage point.
Right.
That means AI, everything, we have to consider who's in the room when these systems are being developed. Just like with the Constitution. So from the Constitution came the financial systems, right? The banking systems. Who gets mortgages and who doesn't?
Right.
That's because from the onset, these systems were exclusive. They were not inclusive.
Right.
So that's what equity work is
Right.
across the board. So it is that connected tissue. It needs to be in the discussion, whether it's AI, which is the new thing right now, not necessarily new, but everybody knows in order to be ahead of the game, you have to be part of this discussion. So my book talks about that. Diversity, inclusion, or illusion is how it has excluded so many groups of people.
Correct. And I think one point that's often also misunderstood by many is the youth component, right?
Yes.
People go, oh, okay, well, we're concluding that we're including them, but are you really? A lot of the decisions that are made about you do not include youth voices.
Yes.
And when you also think about jobs, we have a number of students who are now leaving, secondary education basically, and then deciding to go to college. We're now trying to figure out how do we train people to be part of the workforce, and then how do we educate them to go to decide that they want to go to college. There is a disparity even in that. When you think about the jobs that are out there, the AI software that's being utilized, there are some discrepancies in terms of whose resume is getting picked.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. And now that people are using AI to screen resumes, a lot of times it's immediately exclusive of groups of people. And when we're not talking about this in deep dive, and what we find is the illusion part of the book is that on the surface level, people think that DEIA is this, that, or the other. But when you dig into it, it's so much bigger than what most people know.
Yes.
And so coming from the youth perspective, at labor, I learned so much about workforce development.
Right.
Job Corps is part of the DEIA, the diverse demographic group, and because of the youth. And so that is workforce development, skill building, apprenticeship programs to give those communities with the highest unemployment rate access to resources. It's not just only available for that group, but it says, hey, if this is the highest unemployment rate, let's ensure that these resources get into those communities.
Right.
And that is what the equity lens look like. And so you have re-entry programs or people who were justice involved. Those are also part of the diversity that is not talked about.
Right. I mean, I think maybe within the first 20 days of this year, not even the 21st day, 20 days, I think of the first 20 days of the newest administration, I mean, even getting letters about different AmeriCorps positions and jobs and funding being lost is crucial to a number of communities that are responding to the needs of their own community by using AmeriCorps students, right?
Yes.
You have fellows and students. You have fellows in schools, fellows who are placed in schools. You have people who are working on really critical projects who are in these programs. But when you take out the diversity, when you say, oh, we're not looking at, kids, or we're not looking at youth per se, we're not looking at seniors, you're missing critical components within each community that has been a value set or value add because of the funding and the thought that diversity actually matters.
Yes, absolutely. And gender.
And gender.
I mean, women in trades. And it's not just about hiring,
correct,
right? Equity work is also about community outreach.
Right.
So a lot of times people thinking, oh, it's just hiring more Black people. No, it's bigger than that. That is a portion of it. And you definitely need your workforce to mirror, right, the communities that you're serving in this country. However, it's bigger than that. It is ensuring that the necessary funding and resources are reaching the communities that need them the most, those marginalized communities. And that's what my book talks about. Is like, it's not the performative, DEIA branding exercises that I say that corporations have been doing. We're going to hire a chief diversity officer, but you're not going to give them a budget or a staff resources so they can be successful. We're going to put a DEIA statement on our website, but have you changed the power
and the
structure
culture
and the culture,
internal culture?
Yeah,
because you can do all of that and people still feel marginalized.
Yeah,
in the
that's
office.
why it has to be a systems approach.
Correct.
In order to really shift the culture, you have to do it from a systems approach. You have to literally dismantle, because there's a lot of biased languages inside of systems, and I'm talking about policies, procedures. There's these undertones of what the environment of a workspace is, right? Those ghosts. And so you have to look at the systems to really see the changes that you need to see, so that everyone has an inclusive, the inclusive and equitable opportunity for success.
So I know that we're about to close in a second, but I do want people to be able to find you. So if you were to kind of tell me like who's the ideal person who should be picking up the book, of course it should be everybody, right? So it should be everybody. But who are you looking for? I would believe that HR representatives should be reading your book, right?
Mhm.
First and foremost, it should be community leaders and elected officials should be paying attention to your book. But anybody
Absolutely.
else you think that really should be picking up your book, and where can
Yeah.
they find your book, and where can they find you online?
Sure, it is for the everyday person. I would say CEOs, COOs, people who, first of all, I got another
Yes.
life, right? But in the Bible, there's a guy named Nicodemus, and the Bible says Nicodemus came to Jesus by night. It's those people who don't necessarily want anyone else to know that they're doing this professional development and they want to
Right.
learn, because
Right.
I understand that there is a lot of heat right now in DEIA spaces. So get the book. It's for those people who say, I want to leave my organization, but I just don't know if I should promote DEIA. Okay,
Right.
get this book because I'm going to help you with the language so you can have this conversation. So you can go to the website Diversity Illusion, ILLUSION.com for the book, or you can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
And
Great.
then my website is just simply Alaysia Black Hackett.com, ALAYSIA. Black as in the color, and then Hackett with two T's. And so I would love feedback. You can find me on social media, Instagram and LinkedIn. I would love your feedback. And thank you so much for this
You're
time.
welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Pleasure to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be. Thank you so much.
Okay.